In 2018, a New York Times article was published titled "Quiet Exodus: Why Black Worshipers Are Leaving White Evangelical Churches." Believe it or not, there was a time in the white evangelical church where it almost appeared as if a form of unity was beginning to come together, where black and white congregants could worship together under the same roof. Hip evangelical churches played songs that had a little more soul to them. Maybe they had a choir from time to time. Every once in a while, a black pastor would grace the pulpit. There was excitement brewing, and every evangelical church wanted to be the new hip multi-ethnic church. The invitation was there. Come, you're welcome here. We want you here. We want unity. We want to be able to worship together. But most importantly, we want to be able to tell our friends that we are a 15% multi-ethnic church. And black Christians did. There was a rise of black worshipers in many predominantly white evangelical churches. It seemed like the days that Martin Luther King Jr. dreamed of were finally here. Had we really made it? Was this the dream? Was this the mountaintop? We were going to show the most segregated hour what the power of Christ could do. He could overcome anything. And then the disillusionment happened. The 2016 election happened, and shooting after shooting after shooting happened. White supremacist groups were out in the open. White people with tiki torches were out marching to show their white pride. White Christian nationalism was on the rise. People nonviolently took a knee during the national anthem, and white Christians went crazy. A white supremacist walked into a black church and mass murdered 9 people, yet police were able to apprehend him and then bought him lunch. We've got people in red hats everywhere chanting white power, and time after time after time in the white evangelical churches there's silence, crickets. Why won't you just say something, Pastor? Why won't you talk about this? You have a voice and a position of power. Please speak up. Talk to your people. This is wrong. This is evil. And time again from the evangelical pastors across the country, well, I don't want to get too political and offend anyone. And it isn't just that. Black people assume that they would be fully incorporated into the folds of ministry as well. Here's the question: do black pastors get paid the exact same amount as their counterparts in these churches? Who's on the board? It's one thing to have a black pastor preach from time to time, and it's another thing to have a black pastor give the announcements or be on the worship team. However, it is fully another thing to have a black woman making the financial decisions for your church. That'd be interesting. Let's try that. Then you hear the pushback. Wait a minute. We don't want to be that multi-ethnic. In 2018, a quiet exodus was written. Across the country, people were disillusioned about what was really going on. Was this a false hope? Were people being duped? Welcome back to my Thoughtful Thursdays video channel, where we talk about important topics both inside and outside the church. As always, please make sure that you are subscribed and turn on your notifications to see more videos like this in the future. I want to introduce you all to a couple of wonderful resources as we are working through this very topic today. The first is Jamar Tisby. He has a podcast that is all about leaving loud, where he is encouraging the black masses that are right now leaving the white evangelical churches to not just leave quietly, as the New York Times article suggests. However, he says to leave boldly. Let your voice be heard. Speak up about what you saw. Speak up about what you felt. Let people know why you can't stay there anymore. Let people know that you tried so hard and you just couldn't take it anymore. The church needs to hear this. They need to learn from these events. They need to know why this group of people is leaving after trying for so long to make it work. And if you want to learn, and if you want to hear pain and stories that will make you mad, if you want to feel prickled, then please check his podcast out. He can be found on thewitnessbcc.com. His website states that his podcast is to showcase all those who quietly exited their churches after their pastors and fellow believers failed to denounce state-sanctioned violence against black people, white Christian nationalism, systemic racism, and everyday bigotry. He then says that Leave Loud is to tell our stories, to name things for what they are, to take back the dignity we've lost while being in institutions that don't value the fullness of the image of God within us, and to go where we are celebrated and not just tolerated. That'll preach. The second resource I want to point you to today is Hennie. She is currently one of my favorite writers on race and justice within our country. She is fearless and bold. She is so strong and raw. The things that she says, the things that she makes me think, the way that she thinks. I love her. I hate her. I'm enamored by her. I'm intrigued with her. Every emotion I can think of seems to be invoked by her. Mainly, I'm 100% terrified by her. She makes me think about whiteness in a way that I've never wanted to think about whiteness. I have been offended by her. I've been prickled by her, I've been put in my place by her, I've been humbled by her, and I had two options. I could either lean into those feelings and go deeper, or I could shut down and just act like she was a crazy person. I went with the former. So now to get to the kind of uncomfortable part of this video, the Bible. The written word for all of evangelicalism. How did things end up where they are right now? Well, in terms of evangelicals, it all comes down to how we view the Bible. Since evangelicals have strongly believed in the past of a literal inerrant Bible, please see my biblical inerrancy video for more information on this topic, we can have a clue to why racism has persisted within the church for so long. Now close your eyes as I talk. Obviously, if you're driving or something, don't close your eyes. The Bible mentions in Genesis that God created mankind and he then placed them within the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve are in the garden and they're walking around, they are communing with God. Adam probably has a six-pack and Eve has this perfect body and they are talking with this talking snake and eating the fruit, and then God confronts them afterwards. Okay, now open your eyes. Adam and Eve are white, aren't they? Don't lie. Maybe in your mind's eye they aren't white, but they're light-skinned. Don't worry, you are in good company. When I close my eyes, that is what I see as well. Even if I try to be as woke as possible and not sound quite so racist, I mean, they're tan, maybe olive color, Mediterranean. No, almost zero evangelicals that when they close their eyes see Adam and Eve and they think that they are black. This is a problem, a big problem. The church, in terms of having power, has predominantly been a white church. We project our whiteness onto the pages of the Bible. Of course, we want to see ourselves within the Bible. And since evangelicals also read the Bible literally, they believe that there was a pair of white people from whom the whole of human race came from. Important to note, because that is the lineage that Christians now today draw their faith and their lineage from. They see that God blessed Israel, and we project ourselves into that story. That, of course, that there were other people. There were the Moabites, there were the Cushites, they were the others. We don't know maybe what color skin they had, but then there were the chosen people of God. There was this group that God made a pact with, a special group that was somehow better than everyone else. You can see how this is going south pretty quickly, can't you? Kids in church grow up thinking that all these Bible characters look like them. We see it way before Abraham in the Bible as well. For centuries, Jesus' followers interpreted the mark of Cain as having black skin. After Cain killed Abel, he was cursed with a mark, and many Christians believe throughout history that having black skin was a curse from God to humanity. Obviously, many white people today, probably watching this video, would shout in anger, "I've never believed that." Well, maybe not, but that belief has been prevalent amongst Christians quite recently. This is not ancient history. We need only go back to the lunch counters during the civil rights days to see white people refusing service to black individuals because of the mark of Cain. Where did they learn this form of racism? Right within the Bible. You have to remember, this was a Christian nation. These were God-fearing men and women who went to church on Sundays. They were taught from the pulpits, and they believed that dark skin was a curse from God from a very literal reading of the book of Genesis. And another troubling story right within the Bible is the story right after the flood. Everybody loves Noah's Ark story, but then there's this really awkward story that happens right after the flood. You know, that time that Noah got super drunk, like super drunk, and then passed out naked on the ground drunk. We kind of leave that part out of the children's Bibles. Can you imagine? And God placed a rainbow to remind all of humanity that he would never do something like that again. And then Noah proceeded to get hammered. Noah drank all the wine, and he passed out naked. And then his one son saw him naked and made fun of him to his brothers, and then his other two brothers walked backwards to cover up their father's nakedness. Now, I don't have time to go into that story and what it means exactly, but the next part is the important part to us today. Noah wakes up. Now, he had been drinking wine, so we know what he was feeling like. And in a hangover stupor, he shouts out, "Cursed be Canaan, lowest of slaves shall he be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed by the Lord my God be Shem, and let Canaan be his slave. May God make space for Japheth, and let him live in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his slave." Whoa! 3 times Noah curses the son of Ham, Canaan, or the nation of Canaan. And you must remember, because whiteness projects itself and because we've tried to write our history into this story, we then also believe that Noah and his sons were white, or at the very least, light-skinned. And for people who believe the Bible literally, all ethnic diversity comes down to Noah's lineage post the flood. And each of these 3 sons spreads out, and they went to different locations of the world. And I've had many Christians tell me, even within my tenure as a Christian, that Ham went south into Africa. And that is why there are dark people in Africa, because God cursed them. Holy crap. Better believe that slave owners love these curses. And you see, God cursed Canaan, so when Ham went south into Africa, his curse went with him. They were cursed to be slaves to their brothers. Friends, this is still taught in some churches today, that black people come from Noah's son Ham traveling into Africa and his lineage being cursed as slaves. Well, that's pretty messed up. That interpretation is white supremacy for you right out of the pages of the Bible. Or just think about the story of the Tower of Babel, that the ethnicities and languages were never meant to be mixed together, and that was by somehow God's design. Well, there's a whole lot of racism here to unpack, especially when we bring God into being the reason why these ethnicities and races need to stay apart. I've had 2 white people tell me within the last 2 years that they don't believe in mixed marriages because they believe that God separated race for a reason. These people are devout followers of Jesus. They give to their churches. They are part of the evangelical church. This is not old theology. I told them, of course, what I would tell anyone who said such filth to me. That is a highly offensive thing, and it is trash theology, and it is about as far from the Jesus I worship as you can get. When leaders in the church don't actively combat these ideas from the pulpit on a regular basis, when they don't constantly challenge whiteness from the pulpit, when they don't actively value and seek the input of leaders and financial stewardship from people of color within the church, they are taking the side of the oppressors. And going forth, we are going to hear more stories from people like Jamar Tisby about black people who have left the church hurt and disillusioned by a church that wouldn't stand up to white normalcy, that wouldn't denounce white nationalism, and that wouldn't stand on the side of the marginalized. And at the same time, we're going to hear more and more stories from white people in the evangelical church that just can't fathom why they left. We welcome them here. We tried to have them here. We played their songs. We let that one person do announcements from time to time. Our coffee is free and tastes amazing. I just don't get why they are so upset. It's not too late, church, but it is going to take a whole heck of a lot of us being uncomfortable, and people are going to leave your church spitting mad when you preach about it. They are going to leave your church in the middle of your sermon because how dare you talk about white supremacy from the pulpit. Your sermons on justice are going to make the givers in the church mad because they think it sounds too political, but you'll be the church, and I think that's worth it. We can do better. Friends, that's all the time that we have this week. Please join me back here next week as we take a look at some of the snippets from Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail. Warning, if you think you like Martin Luther King Jr. and love to post a little quote on your social media about once a year, you're really in for a surprise. I always say that people love Martin Luther King Jr. until they actually read Martin Luther King Jr. Well, I've read him and I've listened to him, and I love him. Be prepared for a prickle. See you back here next week, same time, same place.